Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Module 5. This means we've turned the corner in the class and are now more than halfway done. Our work for this week continues our discussion of regionalism, so I wanted to focus my talk today on that. So the first thing I want to mention is that regularly within studies of American literature, you'll see one author listed by one critic as a realist, and you might also see the same author listed by another critic as a naturalist. So this is something that we just have to deal with. The way we work in literary studies is that if you make a claim and can back it up, then it's as good as anybody else's claim. Our reaction to seeing things like this is to bring our own perspective, our own proofs, and to critically compare them with what we see using reasoned judgment. That doesn't mean we have to change our minds every time about whether someone is a realist or a naturalist or a regionalist or anything. We just have to understand that whoever we're reading, whatever source we're using, is coming at it from that direction and what that means. All right. Now, I bring this up because in this class, we're talking about regionalism as though it's largely considered a part of realism. And what I want to say is it's possible to say that, but not every researcher thinks about it like that. Often, regionalism is thought of as a completely independent movement, one paralleling realism, but not directly related to it. Last week, in one announcement, I tied together regionalism with the local color movement, and that's its official name, local color, saying that they were just different terms for the same thing. And again, I think that makes sense, or I would not have said it. But some scholars make the distinction between regionalism, as we see it in Twain or Bret Harte or George Washington Cable, and the fiction of the women we're going to be looking at in Module 5. Instead of regionalism, they prefer to offer a distinction and call the works of these women local color, not regionalism. The reasons for doing this do make some sense, but it largely depends on the purpose of the critic in demonstrating how literature produced by women in the 19th century was treated differently from literature produced by men. And you can just think about what the terms that they're applying to each of these, how they resonate with you. Regional sounds expansive and encompassing, all right? It sounds kind of official. Then compare this to the other term, local, and think about how that makes it seem like, it's just the neighborhood. It's just right around you, all right? So one is for men and one is for women. So, like I said, it does make some sense. For our purposes, we're not really going to get into distinctions like that because we're mainly concerned with thinking in terms of how real life was depicted in the fiction of the 19th century. And so we're moving from Twain's regionalism into what I'm going to continue to call the regionalism of Sarah Orne Jewett and Kate Chopin. Now, both of these authors are very interesting and they're both well studied for a variety of reasons. Jewett wrote about life in rural New England, and her focus on nature is such that she has become a real poster child for discussion among scholars who come at literature through a technique called eco-criticism. And this is an approach to literature that stresses the part that environment plays as character as much as setting. And they would like to talk about how this, meaning environment and how it's depicted, plays into how we all imagine our relationship with the world around us. All right. So they think of it as being very significant because, the world we live in today is somewhat we speak of it as being in trouble because of, human activity. And so they want us to be more aware. They see, they want to talk about the history of how people have related with the world and how that's depicted in literature and how it's led us to where we are now. All right. So Jewett's big in that. Now, Chopin was a native of Missouri, but she lived a considerable portion of her life in New Orleans and tended to write about 19th century life in the far South. Chopin provides a good example of what I was saying at the start about how different authors are thought of in different ways. I study Chopin as a naturalist author, not as a regional one. However, this just comes down to a matter of emphasis. I see her work as primarily signifying in the framework of naturalism. That does not mean that she does not have a spot as a regional writer. My perspective says that you get more worth out of understanding her as a naturalist, but I am not the arbiter of understanding for everyone, and I make allowances that others may get more from seeing her in another way. That's fine, so long as the concept is not arbitrary and proofs are provided. That's all we ask for. So, for our purposes in the class, thinking of Chopin as both regionalist and naturalist can actually help us make the turn away from realism that we will be really needing to make very shortly. And that will be helped in next week's focus on Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Now, your milestone work for this week is for you to actually put together an annotated bib, all right? I don't know that everyone's done this. There are some resources on our module for how to go about doing it. I will provide some examples of my own as well to help you out with that. If you have questions during the week, by all means, let me know. You know the way this works. If you do not have questions and don't need to talk with me, that's fine too. We'll get by. All right. So till next week, adios for now.